Alright. I promised you all I'd do something, or I didn't make any promises. This is kind of off top of my head here, obviously. So, what I've been doing normally is that what I would do is I'd open up Earth Sculptor and I'd sculpt all my terrain and stuff, and then I'd, model my buildings or whatever I needed to do. I'd import all that, make a tiled terrain in Blender, and then anytime I need to make changes to the terrain, I would actually open up Earth Sculptor, keep Blender open, and uh, basically re-edit in Earth Sculptor and be swapping back and forth, using the old Windows hotkey of Alt Tab and refreshing my views in Blender or reloading my maps. Well, I started thinking about it. I thought, that's kind of dumb. I'm doing a lot of my modeling in Blender now. I'm primarily decided to move everything to Blender, so I spent I guess it's been the last 8 hours or so, 6 hours, whatever. I'm just making crap up now, but trying to figure out how to get it into Blender, do it all in Blender. So this is the fruit of that. In your default view, this normally isn't here. Put this in here, and you should have something that looks like this, basically. You see a little camera or something. Yeah, something like that. That's your default view. Well, go ahead and with your cube selected, hit X and erase selected objects, spacebar, add mesh plane. And this is how I'm going to make my tiled terrain from now on. I'm going to scale it up, and I'm just going to hit S and press 2 on my number pad, and then click the left mouse button to commit to it, and tab into edit mode. And now normally I would subdivide multi, 2 cuts, and that's going to give you a matrix of like a 3x3 matrix, or 9 pieces of terrain. Say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, which is 0, 0, 0, 1, 0, 2, 1, 0, 1, 1, 1, 2, etc., etc. So I'm not going to do that this time. So this time I'm just going to do quite simple subdivided ones, do 4 pieces of terrain. And I'm probably not even going to do that. Here's the situation. The reason that I'm using a tiled terrain system is, for one, I want a large world, and two, you can have loading zones when you have tiled terrain. If your player is, say, on this piece of terrain, then obviously this piece of terrain is going to have all of the objects and fauna, etc. loaded. And when you're transitioning terrain, you can have the next tile of terrain loaded as well. And this piece of terrain is actually a very bad example of that, because there's only basically 5 loading zones. There's a loading zone for this piece of terrain. If you're on this piece of terrain, that means this terrain knows that it's going to have its objects loaded. This piece of terrain, same scenario. This piece of terrain, the same scenario. This piece of terrain, the same scenario. When you get to where you're crossing terrains, though, normally what you would do is you'd kind of use the surrounding terrains to load it into. So if you're going, say, diagonal, you're going to have everything loaded for every piece of terrain here. So that's not good. So let's undo that. Subdivide multi, 2. So now you see the same thing. If you're in this piece of terrain, you have to have this piece, this piece, this piece, and this piece loaded. Well, that leaves these 5 that don't have to be loaded. Same thing with the center. When you're on the center, that's tricky. On this kind of terrain, the center piece, it kind of is telling you have to have basically everything loaded. So, well, luckily for me, I'm not using this small of a tile for my terrains. My terrain's tiling is much larger. There are roughly 64 pieces of terrain. So this will be enough to get us going. So if you subdivide it, W is your hotkey, or you can go into mesh. Let's see what it is. Faces, I think. Not real good with the things. I'm a hotkey guy. I use hotkeys constantly, so I don't really know. I'm looking. Pardon me while I look. Here we go. Edges, I guess. No. Faces. I guess there's no way, unless you guys will see it later and go, it's right there, dude, you're missing it. Anyway, W, subdivide multi, subdivide 2 times. Okay, done. Okay, now when we have that done, we can leave it in edit mode. We're going to go over here and split the area by using your middle mouse button between windows. Split. And we're going to go to the UV image editor. Go image, new, and we'll just call this HMP, or no, we aren't going to do it that way. We'll call this RGB for the color map. 1024, it's fine. And why I'm not saying it, I don't know. There it is. Okay. So now we got these pieces done. I'm going to also, we're going to need two more things. We're going to need a vertex map, or a vertex group, excuse me, and a modifier to add to all of these at the same time. Also the same thing with the texture. It's easier to do it all while it's grouped, and that's not making sense now. It'll make sense later because I'm going to separate each one of these tiles and then subdivide each one. You'll see. So make a vertex group. Group is default, so we'll just stick with that, and assign. That automatically assigns it to 100. And hit U in the viewport to unwrap it, or project from view bounds. What that'll do is basically unwrap it, as you see over here in the UV image editor. It projects it to the boundary of the pixels of the image. And we're going to need that for our color map. And we're also going to need a material. Add new, we'll just call it Terra. And in the shaders tab, we'll make it fully diffuse, take off the specularity and hardness. Okay, and this is almost all we need. The last thing we're going to need is a modifier, and that's a displacement. No, we aren't going to need that, because that was I'm getting confused now because I'm doing this on the fly. That's not a good thing to do, especially if you're doing a tutorial, or this isn't really a tutorial, it's more like a workflow example. So we'll just leave it like that. And now we're going to go to faces. I'm going to select each one, hit P selected, and what I'm doing is P, it separate selected pieces. So now they have all the same UV map, they all have the same groups, whatever, but they're separate pieces of terrain, which you can't really see very well here, unless I tab into edit mode. Now what I'm going to do is join them all together. I'm just going to hit B for region select, I guess. Missed one. Control J, join those all together. Okay. Let's make sure. Nope, missed one. For some reason they are not joining. Okay. Hit Z again, Alt Z, hit Z. All I'm doing with Z and Alt Z is toggling between shaded mode, Alt Z is textured mode, and you basically figure it out. How's that for advice? Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to leave this here, and I'm going to kick up another video because this is probably eating a lot of time. So stay tuned.